At this exact moment, 52 million American households are counting on an inheritance that will never arrive. They've calculated it, planned their retirements around it, told their children about it, and they're about to discover it was always an illusion. The financial media won't stop talking about it. $127 trillion, according to the latest Cerulli Associates projections through 2045. They're calling it the greatest generational wealth transfer in human history. But here's what they're not telling you. This isn't a transfer at all. It's a consolidation event, a wealth compression mechanism that has operated with mathematical precision across every major empire in recorded history. And the people expecting to receive this windfall? They're not the beneficiaries. They're the fuel. There's a pattern here, a four-stage cycle that has repeated itself across millennia with such consistency that once you understand it, you'll see it operating in real time right now in America. This isn't speculation or theory. This is documented historical fact verified across Roman currency debasement, Weimar hyperinflation, and the post-Bretton Woods dollar system. And stage 4, the consolidation phase, is happening right now while millions wait for wealth that's already being siphoned away. Let me show you exactly how this machine works, because once you see the architecture, you'll understand why the outcome is inevitable. Stage 1 begins when a civilization establishes monetary credibility. A currency backed by something tangible creates trust. Commerce flourishes. Credit expands. People believe the system is permanent, that their savings are secure. This foundational stage can last decades or centuries, long enough for generations to forget that monetary systems are neither natural nor eternal. Stage 2 arrives when costs exceed the capacity to fund them legitimately. Wars demand financing. Programs expand beyond sustainability. Those in power face a choice: raise taxes and face political consequences, or debase the currency quietly. They always choose debasement. They reduce precious metal content. They print unbacked paper currency, they expand the money supply, and they promise nothing has changed. Stage 3 is where the pattern accelerates. Inflation erodes purchasing power noticeably. The currency deteriorates month by month, then week by week. Those holding wealth in the debasing currency, savers, wage earners, pensioners, watch their life's work evaporate. Meanwhile, those closest to monetary creation, the political elites, the land-owning aristocracy, they shift wealth into hard assets before collapse. They survive, they consolidate, they emerge owning a larger percentage of total wealth. Stage 4 is the reset. A new currency is introduced. But wealth has already transferred from millions of middle-class currency holders to thousands of elite asset holders. The system restarts, and the population somehow forgets within a generation. This isn't theory. Let me prove it with 3 distinct historical examples separated by centuries and continents, yet following the identical pattern with terrifying precision. Rome, 1st century AD through 3rd century AD. Under Emperor Augustus, Rome's denarius contained approximately 95% pure silver. This was stage 1, a trusted monetary foundation. By 64 AD, Emperor Nero faced crisis after the Great Fire. He reduced the denarius silver content to roughly 80% to fund reconstruction and wars. Stage 2 had begun. By 211 AD under Septimius Severus, that same denarius contained barely 46% silver. Then Emperor Caracalla introduced the Antoninianus in 215 AD, supposedly worth 2 denarii but containing only 1.5 times the silver. Monetary fraud institutionalized at the imperial level. The acceleration was breathtaking. By 253 AD, the Antoninianus contained 20% silver. 10 years later, 2%. Stage 3 arrived catastrophically. Prices exploded by factors of 10, 100, 1,000%. Small landholders, craftsmen, merchants who had saved in coin lost everything overnight. Meanwhile, those who owned land or had converted to gold survived and expanded their holdings by purchasing distressed assets. By Diocletian's currency reforms in the late 3rd century, stage 4, wealth consolidation was complete. The Roman middle class had been destroyed. Weimar Germany, 1921 through 1923. Germany emerged from World War I burdened with 132 billion gold marks in reparations, roughly $500 billion today. The treaty demanded payment in gold-backed currency, but Germany had abandoned the gold standard and possessed minimal reserves. The Weimar government chose to print money rather than implement brutal austerity. Watch the acceleration. In early 1922, the exchange rate stood at 320 marks per dollar. 6 months later, 7,400 marks per dollar. When France occupied the Ruhr Valley in January 1923, Germany printed money to pay workers to strike. By summer, the rate exceeded 1 million marks per dollar. By November, it reached 4.2 trillion marks to $1. A loaf of bread that cost 160 marks in December 1922 cost 200 billion marks 11 months later. Workers demanded payment twice daily. People carried money in wheelbarrows because the physical volume exceeded what they could pocket. Every German family that had saved money, bought war bonds, or kept bank accounts was annihilated financially. Generations of wealth evaporated in under 2 years. Those who owned tangible assets, farmland, factories, or had foreign currency survived and consolidated. When the Rentenmark was introduced in November 1923, Stage 4, the wealth transfer was complete and irreversible. August 15, 1971. President Nixon announces the U.S. is suspending dollar convertibility into gold. For 27 years since Bretton Woods in 1944, the dollar was pegged to gold at $35 per ounce. Every other major currency was pegged to the dollar. But by 1971, decades of deficit spending, financing Vietnam, and maintaining global military presence had created far more dollars than America possessed gold to back them. France began demanding actual gold, exposing the imbalance. On August 11th, Britain requested conversion of $3 billion into physical gold. The U.S. possessed only 10,000 metric tons, less than half its post-war peak. Nixon closed the gold window. Within 15 months, Bretton Woods collapsed. The dollar became pure fiat. Stage 2 arrived. The 1970s destroyed a generation's savings. Inflation accelerated from 1.4% in 1960 to 11% by 1974, peaking above 14% in 1980. Anyone holding dollars in savings accounts, bonds, or fixed pensions watched purchasing power collapse by 40% over the decade. Real wages stagnated. Meanwhile, those holding assets, real estate, equities, commodities, thrived. The wealth gap began widening systematically and has never stopped. Which brings us to today, to the $127 trillion wealth transfer. As of 2024, the wealthiest 1% control approximately 31% of all household wealth, roughly $50 trillion. The bottom 50%, some 165 million people, control less than 3%. Total U.S. household wealth stands at $163 trillion, inflated by asset price appreciation, driven by 4 decades of declining rates and monetary expansion. But here's the critical detail. Of that projected $127 trillion transfer, approximately $65 trillion comes from just the wealthiest 2%. And where is it going? It's staying concentrated at the top. Wealthy families transfer to their own children, who are already in the top 10%. This is consolidation, not distribution. Northwestern Mutual's research reveals the expectation gap. While 38% of millennials expect meaningful inheritances, only 26% of Americans plan to leave anything substantial. The median inheritance for the bottom 90% is statistically near zero. Most will receive nothing or amounts too small to matter. Meanwhile, healthcare costs and end-of-life care consume estates. Nursing homes average $108,000 annually. Most elderly will spend final assets on care, not pass them to heirs. The great wealth transfer is a myth for ordinary Americans. Let's verify the 4 stages for America. Stage 1. Did America establish a trusted currency? Yes, the gold-backed dollar under Bretton Woods. Complete. Stage 2. Has America debased that currency? Absolutely. Since 1971, pure fiat. Money supply expanded exponentially. National debt exceeds $36 trillion. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet exploded from under $1 trillion in 2008 to over $7 trillion through quantitative easing. Complete. Stage 3. Loss of control and wealth concentration? Undeniable. Real wages stagnated for 5 decades. Housing affordability collapsed. The top 1% controls wealth equivalent to the entire bottom 90%. Asset prices detached from fundamentals, inflated by monetary expansion benefiting asset holders exclusively. Complete. Stage 4. The reset? It's happening now, disguised as a wealth transfer. This is the endgame, the inevitable outcome of 50 years of fiat expansion. You're thinking it right now. This time is different. America has the reserve currency. We have technology companies worth trillions. That's exactly what Romans thought controlling the Mediterranean. That's what Germans thought leading Europe in industry. Every civilization believes it's exceptional before the pattern completes, but the pattern operates on mathematics, not exceptionalism. When you debase currency, you destroy savers and reward asset holders. This has happened without exception for 2,000 years. There are no exceptions. Here's what you need to understand with clarity. If you're holding wealth in cash, in savings accounts earning 4% while inflation runs at 8%, in bonds yielding less than inflation, you are on the losing side of history's greatest wealth consolidation. The pattern demonstrates that currency debasement transfers wealth from currency holders to asset holders every time. Land, productive businesses, commodities, equities and companies with pricing power, these appreciate when currency debases. The $127 trillion transfer isn't coming to you unless you're already positioned in assets. It's extracting value from wage earners and concentrating it in asset holders. So what do? First, abandon the fantasy that a meaningful inheritance is coming. Statistics say it's not. Second, understand that your dollar savings are being systematically devalued through monetary expansion happening right now. Third, position yourself correctly by accumulating assets that cannot be printed, that have intrinsic value or scarcity, independent of currency pricing. The pattern has repeated for 2 millennia. Rome, Weimar, Nixon-era America, and now 2024 America reaching its crescendo. The only question is whether you'll recognize it before Stage 4 completes. The machine was designed centuries ago. It's operating exactly as intended. The great wealth transfer of 2024 isn't a windfall. It's the final act of a pattern that has destroyed the middle class of every civilization that has run this experiment. And right now, you're living through the conclusion.